Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome an accomplished professional from Mumbai, India, Vinee Ajmera. Vinee, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ashutosh. Thank you for having me on your show.
Thank you. Vinee is the founder and chief executive officer of Personage or Personage. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. She's an acclaimed executive presence coach. So Vinee, before we talk about executive presence, tell me about your own journey in brief.
Okay, lovely. So thank you. Thank you for that quick introduction. And yes, a lot of people call it Personage, but I run Personage. And I'm okay for them to call it Personage because I guess that's the French pronunciation, which is a corporate training and learning solutions company. And what we do is we assist organizations in building high-performing teams by just empowering their employees and helping them drive results.
Wonderful.
So I'll backtrack when I go. I'll go backwards. So I founded Personage a little over 10 years ago. And before that, I was a part of a very, very interesting initiative in arts and literature where we curated capsule programs in learning for regular professionals, right? Who may not have much to do with arts, but who wanted to know what's it all about. And before that, I had a long stint in aviation. I was a cabin crew for 9 years across Jet Airways, Singapore Airlines, and Virgin Atlantic. And so that's basically broadly my journey, which when I look back, it looks, people say it's such different experience and how is it that you're doing what you're doing? And I feel, no, it's all those experiences that that kind of culminated into what I feel I've learned about people or culminated into my interest in people and their behaviors, which allows me to do what I'm doing today and, meeting many more people. So that's essentially my journey.
And, you're absolutely right. It is an amazing diversity of experience that you've had. And I guess that's what you bring to executive presence and Personage. But my first question to you, Vinee, is how do you define executive presence?
So, of course, there is a lot of study done about it. And then there is this author called Sylvia Ann Hewlett who defines it very beautifully. And I think it sums it up because when we speak about it, it feels like this mysterious thing and everyone has a different definition for it or a different perspective about it. And I think all of those definitions and perspectives are spot on and they're right. But the way she defined it resonates with me and I'll share that with you. And she says that it's your ability to inspire confidence in your stakeholders. And I would take it a little bit more beyond to say that it's your ability to inspire confidence in your capabilities and your intentions in your stakeholders. And personally, I had my own definition, which was like an epiphany or through an encounter I had a few years ago. When obviously, before the lockdown, we were all into a lot of instructor-led or offline sessions that we would do largely. And somewhere I felt that, no, I wanted to go online. I felt we are not able to reach smaller towns. We are only doing metros. So with that in mind, I decided to take this online with almost anyone and everyone bashing me for it. And they're like, you're crazy, you're wasting time, you're going to waste money, nobody sees videos and nobody's going to go online. At a time like that, I still went ahead with it. But then I had also several supporters. So by virtue of that, I was meeting a lot of very senior people and having very different experiences, despite me being the same person, preparing completely for those meetings because it was such a new concept and also needed decision makers because it required a certain amount of investment from those organizations. And on one such occasion, I met this person, this gentleman, and my encounter and meeting with him suddenly, made me feel and actually sense presence in the best way that I could have said, okay, this is the most impactful presence that I have felt. And that gave rise to another definition that I call my definition, and which I think as you go higher up, that definition starts becoming a little bit more important. So one is, of course, on your journey, you constantly want to inspire confidence and trust. But also, as you go higher up, you want to create a space for those around you, right, to shine and bring out their excellence.
Mm,
So my favorite way to say it is being able to create a space where others can also shine in your brilliance.
mm.
So if you're able to do that, then that is executive
Oh,
presence.
wonderful. What a great definition. Thank you. And Vinny, how have your experiences with three of the major airlines
Mhm.
that you spoke about in your introduction influenced your approach to executive presence and coaching?
Oh, in so many ways. I think everything that happens 30,000 feet above sea level is like the magical ideal situation that every corporate could hope for.
Correct.
Whether it's in terms of the way people are, the courtesies, the politeness, the mindset to serve, right?
Mm,
It's all about the customers. The primary reason why you're there is safety, and then you're doing really good service, making sure everyone gets what they want, the speed
mm,
and the briskness. But having said all that, I think from the evolution perspective, what I gained from it that allows me to do a little bit of a good job at what we do
mm,
is openness.
mm.
I think what flying allowed you to do, us to do, is you were constantly meeting different people from different walks of life, backgrounds, preferences, attire. They're all coming on board and they're all your passengers,
Yeah.
and you are not discriminating. You have to serve each one of them with that same level of enthusiasm and smile, and that came naturally. So I think somewhere the openness for people to be different than what I had seen growing up or what I had seen around me, that openness started kicking in also in their choices, in the way they, perhaps their opinions, their belief systems, right? You're meeting so many people that you wouldn't really have the luxury, the bandwidth, the time to even think you can judge. So I
Mm,
think very naturally that experience probably shaped many of us who went through this experience as cabin crew
mm,
back in the day, shaped us to be non-judgmental, which is a very critical
yeah.
element in coaching and
Mm,
also in presence, in accepting others. It shaped us to accept. And I think a lot of people skills, like the ability to serve, empathy, I just think very naturally it imbibed those qualities in us without having to specify it in as many words.
mm. Great
Yeah.
response. Thank you. You also mentioned, that one of the key things about executive presence is when others, and that's your definition, when a leader allows other people to grow also around them. But what would you say are some of the key attributes that define a leader with a strong executive presence?
Right. I think again, a fantastic question. So I've actually, based on all the study I did and the books I read and the experiences I've had, I kind of formed a framework of my own, and it has these three very powerful cornerstones,
Mm,
right? And one is extremely deep, extremely, I think it's very, very solid,
mm,
and and it has a lot of weightage, and that's gravitas, right?
mm,
So when you're constantly developing your gravitas, which
mm,
is your maturity in the space that you're going forward with, and that's just such a deep word, right?
mm,
Even in Hindi they say therav, right?
mm,
Right? So it's your ability to be grounded,
mm,
to be mature and being humble, that hey, I've accomplished so much, but I have such a long way to go.
mm,
So gravitas is one. As leaders keep going forward in their careers, constantly deepening that element would immediately give them a presence that others start feeling comfortable, because you
right.
can't say it. I can't say, hey, I'm great. Be around me. I'm going to make it a great space for you to be in. Be comfortable, be open. No, it's your presence.
Mm,
When you walk into the room, people should feel that, yes, I think this is going to be a great meeting. I think this person is going to make me feel heard. I think this person has something great to say that I may want to consider.
yeah.
So gravitas is one.
Mm,
Second, very, very important in today's day and age, in this whole fast paced environment where we don't have time to keep evaluating people, keep evaluating experiences. is authenticity.
Mm,
So I think the more authentic a leader comes across,
mm,
the easier it is to connect with them, the
mm,
easier it is for others to work around you and not be confused. And
mm,
also, it's a matter of self-awareness and
mm,
self-acceptance. So I think the more authentic you are, the more you will deliver well in who you are, and you'll be able to take on a growth journey for yourself.
mm,
And I think a beautiful quality about anyone today to develop presence is the quality to continue to evolve. So authenticity lays that groundwork for you. And then the third is confidence.
mm.
And I think that has to be holistic, not just in self-confidence in your
Yeah.
thoughts, and, in the way that you believe, but also in the way that you come across, right? Your energy, like,
Mm,
again, I'll bring it to the same thing. When you get somewhere,
mm,
do you immediately evoke confidence in whatever you're going to have to say? So when you start sensing these traits and these qualities in a leader, and it's a package, you're not going to be able to narrow it down. Okay, I think this is a take. Of course, there are those elements that we work on,
mm,
but I think to a larger audience, one just knows it. And I think if these three cornerstones are enhanced, are constantly developed, then that automatically will give the
mm.
leader.
Well
Um,
said. Well said. And just to recap, you've said there are three specific points. One is gravitas, second is authenticity, and the third one is confidence. Thank you. But Vinny, as I was preparing for you, I was also reading some interesting terms like working across generations.
yes.
Now, tell me, how does working across generations helps bridge the gap between different age groups in the workplace?
So I think that's the whole concept is so it was something that I started noticing when I would also go and deliver these workshops with many audiences, right from high potentials who are still at this very brimming, enthusiastic but super sharp, razor sharp intelligence level,
Mm,
to very senior leaders. And I realized everywhere that we went, wherever there was this mismatch in the age group or the generation, there were stark uh, I wouldn't really call it conflicts, but there were stark differences that would make one party feel less appreciated by the other.
right.
And right now we are in an era where there are five generations at work, right?
Mm,
Right from people who are already in their 60s, 70s, which is the baby boomers, to Gen X, Y, Z, and now the younger Gen Alpha. So
mm,
when we have so many generations at work, it starts becoming critical to recognize that there are lots of biases at play in this area also.
mm,
So we talk about diversity, but we get stuck on either religion, caste, gender. But the one area where we need most inclusiveness, the one area that exists no matter what, is the age groups that are working in one organization. You might have an organization that has all women-led organizations are only men, but
yeah.
age-wise, you can't contain that. You can't say, okay, I'm going to pick every one of this lot, and this is the lot that's going to work
Mm,
together.
mm, mm,
So, how do they start recognizing what each generation brings to the table? And there were those stark things, right? Like older generations, I've found myself saying this often, oh, you don't know in our times this would
I
happen.
know. Mm,
Right? We say that. And then the younger generation will say, yeah, but then that time's gone and we have a better idea. Right?
absolutely.
And then either the older generation will dismiss them or the younger generation will be arrogant or, in their defense, and the older generation will not feel respected enough. So how do we bridge that gap?
Okay.
So I often say it's bridging the gap between X, Y, and Z.
Well said. Well said. Well said. I've heard this also many times. I used to swim across the river to go to school, uh,
Yeah.
but my next question to you is how can you talk a little bit about the significance of body language and your vocal tone when it comes to executive presence?
Yes, so again, amazing question. So earlier, like I discussed the cornerstones. Now, these are not elements that you can see, right? They're not tangible, they're not visible elements. They're just qualities that emanate. So
Mm,
how do these qualities, what are the channels through which you sense these qualities in people?
mm,
And then those are how you appear, right? How do you show up as a professional, as a leader, how you communicate with people, how you behave with them, and how you relate. And body language has a lot to do with that. Is your body language open? Is it confident? How is your posture?
Mm.
How ready do you feel? How energized do you feel? How
Yeah.
open-minded you are, right?
Mm.
And again, vocal becomes so important because I think many times, and in this generation, one, either in the way that we speak, we demonstrate in our tone friendliness or unfriendliness,
Mm.
interest or disinterest. We also demonstrate sarcasm, right?
Mm.
So it's a cutting edge tone to like an open tone. Yeah, I'm listening to you, or
Mm.
yes, I'm listening to you. So it's the same words and the difference it makes.
Well
So
said.
the more mindful you become about the body language and the tone of voice, that's a journey one can sense, right? When you take that journey. And again, the moment it's neutral enough to give people that space where
Mm.
they can thrive, then you know that you have done a good job or you are on the right path
Mm.
towards creating that presence.
Fascinating. And how do you think, Vinny, uh, executive presence can be misunderstood or misapplied?
So I didn't. I know we spoke about this earlier, but explain your question to me. So
Basically, I've seen this very often in my own career also. If you're 6 feet 3 inches and then you think that you got tremendous executive presence, and then you go almost up to 6 inches to someone,
right,
can't you understand what this is what I'm trying to say? So
right.
sometimes people tend to use their own presence, maybe not executive presence, to be either able to bully or to be able to make their point felt. So I thought I'll ask the expert.
So I think it's great to be that tall or have any of those qualities. Where it can be misunderstood is sometimes in people who want to develop it, right? You
Mm.
look at a reference point
Mm.
and we don't realize we admire lots of people, but who are the people we look up to as role models? So,
Correct.
so sometimes I could be a reserved person,
Mm.
right? Or I could be a great listener, but I
Mm.
don't have the charm that you have.
Mm.
And I may try to be that charming and it may not come right. And that's where my presence will dip because you'll be like, oh, it's not quite adding up. Or
Right.
the other way around. So many times people ask this question, oh, but everybody can't have charisma. And then I often say, but who says only charisma is presence?
Correct.
Yes, when someone has charisma, it could be presence, right? So
Mm.
all charisma might lead to presence, but not everyone who has presence has one particular quality.
True.
And if we have time, I'll quickly give you the example between Steve Jobs and Tim Cook,
Mm.
right? Like Steve Jobs was full charisma, powerful, very motivated, very energized about things. Now, when Tim Cook took over, I'm sure he would have had that dilemma that how do I fit into these shoes,
Mm.
right? Because everyone subscribes to Steve Jobs,
Mm.
but he decided to play authentic.
Mm.
And he's the most subtle, understated guy who's done, again, a marvelous job and who
Yep.
is a great leader as well. And I think where it can get misunderstood is when people are not authentic. When I
Mm.
feel I want to be like Ashutosh to fit in, and
Mm.
then I lose who I am, and then that's where I lose my presence. So
Mm.
I don't think presence is about a towering person or a small person, but if you're comfortable in where you are, and I'll take you back to the definition. Are you giving confidence to others in your ability and intent?
Very well said.
Creating a space. So
Great response. Thank you. And I use that example of a tall person only because I wanted to get a great response from you. Thank you. My next question is, Vinny, what role does emotional intelligence play in executive presence?
again, very powerful. So when I spoke of gravitas, actually across, so all of these cornerstones, if you look at it, so we break it down into various elements that help
Mhm.
you develop it,
Mm.
and each one translates to the other cornerstone also. But for example, I spoke of self-awareness with authenticity. Like you can't be you if you don't know who you are.
Yeah.
Right. So the more and emotional intelligence, what are the four pillars of emotional intelligence? I'd
Mm.
say there's a fifth
Mm.
one, motivation, but first is self-awareness. Then it's about self-regulation, which
Yeah.
I always feel that the best way, even while you're working on it, if you want to convey presence, is perhaps if one could take a pause,
Mm.
either in conflict situations, when asked a tricky question, or when wanting to make somebody feel heard. That one pause in itself is so powerful that you start
Right.
feeling, okay, yeah, here's where I feel great. So
Mm.
that's the part about self-regulation. Are you able to contain your emotions in a situation?
Mm.
And lend to the context, right? Are
Right.
you able to contribute?
Mm.
Third one is gravitas. I think empathy is so critical towards deepening your gravitas. And then again, that's a very critical element of emotional intelligence.
Mm.
How are you able to respect and understand someone else's feeling and fully discern, that yes, they are not the same as yours. You probably will never feel that way, but you understand it and you respect that somebody could feel different. And then again, your social skills. How do you communicate and how do you relate? So, emotional intelligence, I would say, is also quite the bedrock, very,
Mm.
very critical towards presence. Yeah,
Very well said. So I have time for two more questions.
sure.
My next question for you is that, and we spoke about authenticity. What are some of the challenges of maintaining authenticity while trying to enhance one's executive presence? And I love the example you gave about Steve Jobs and Tim Cook.
Yeah. So I think just that one, sometimes you may not be you, and people often feel inauthenticity is dishonesty. I'd say there's a fine difference because even a dishonest person could be authentic because you know that this guy, okay, or this girl, let me discount 90% of what they're saying or
Mhm.
doing. So
Mhm.
that's their authenticity. But what really largely comes in the way of being authentic is your constant need for validation,
Mhm.
right? Your constant need to fit in or also trying to be the person who you think you want to be. So, yes, I'm here and I want to get there, but I start believing I'm already there and I start, rather than working on it, I start believing I'm that. And then there is a mismatch in my actions.
Mhm.
In my behaviors up to what I want to be. So be who you are. I am a person and I have perhaps 20 strengths and 20 flaws which I'm working on,
Mhm.
and that I'm working on it can be an awareness I need to have. I don't need to start becoming that perfect person I want to be today. As
Mhm.
long as that awareness, I think what derails that process in being authentic is the tendency to feel that you want to please everyone. So that one is that realization that not everyone's going to be happy,
Correct.
and the tendency to fit in. I think people will accept you far better if they just understand who they may not like you initially, but they'll accept you. But if you're inauthentic, you likely are going down in the long term. That's not the path
Mhm.
that's going to yield results or confidence or trust.
Well said. Well said. And my last question to you, Vinee, and we've got a very large number of young people who will be listening to our conversation. What is one piece of advice you'd like to leave with our viewers and listeners today about achieving and maintaining executive presence?
Don't wait for it to be a project. Just start small.
Mm.
Perhaps either start with creating. I mean, for the young audience, I say bring energy in what you do. Don't be loose. Don't be like the moment you bring energy, you'll feel
Mm.
it. And
Mm.
people will also feel that healthy confidence. And the second most powerful thing we can all start, I work on it as I speak as well, because it's going to take a long journey to get there and perhaps never. It's work in progress. Like I said earlier, is maintaining that pause.
Mm.
So, yeah, and be humble.
Yeah.
Just, I think humility is so powerful because it allows you to fail as many times as you want, without having to commit to some grandeur or arrogance. So, I think humility can allow you to grow very fast, fail
Mm.
fast, and get up fast. So, just, yeah, those are some of the
Well
things I
said.
think we can
Well
start.
said. And on that note, Vinny, I just want to say thank you so much for speaking to me about your own amazing journey. Thank you for speaking to me about so many different aspects of executive presence and all the great work that you're doing at Personage. I think I learned several new things. I love your definition of executive presence. I also love the three components or 3 points that you gave for executive presence, which is gravitas, authenticity, and confidence. Thank you for speaking to me and good luck to you.
Thank you so much. I had a wonderful time speaking with you as well.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.